Bluff City Media presents the Two Buck Sports Show with your hosts, Rusty Buckets and Uncle Buck. Now, let's get to the show.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to your Friday edition of the Two Buck Sports Show. I am your co-host, Rusty Buckets, checking in with you from my dad's bedroom in Corinth, Mississippi. So that's kind of the manifesto serial killer vibes here with the bright light in my face. But you know what? When you have to go out of town, you make it work and get an episode to drop. My guy Drew Gann is still out of town, so I got a special treat for y'all today. As you know, we have been going through all of the SEC schools and doing a season preview. And so, unfortunately, today is the Tennessee Volunteers episode. So I hate that for our listeners, but I do got my guy Shawn Coleman on the other side of the commercial break. Cannot wait to chop it up with him. I've been a huge fan of Shawn's work, with his stats and convincing me to not jump off a cliff or crash out so many times with stats that he's dropped about the Grizzlies. 1 out of 3 ain't bad. I do appreciate his Grizz fandom, but being a Braves fan and a Vols fan, we'll see how that goes on today's episode. But before we get into that, I do want to remind you, tomorrow, 1:30 p.m., it is going down at Grind City Brewing, your home for college football on Saturdays this fall. Reminder, we will have Texas and Ohio State on the big screen at 11. Our show is going live at 1:30 p.m. Then they're going to throw up Alabama at Florida State at 2:30 and cap out the day with LSU at Clemson at 6 p.m. It's going to be a phenomenal day of college football. Word is we've never been more back. Grind City hosting college football. It's going to be cool in the morning when the show starts. It's going to be perfect football weather. Your King Meeks is going to be there. Kenny and I are going to be there. You never know who else is going to turn up. So make sure y'all come out in force to Grind City Brewing tomorrow. I'm going to be there at 11, Mississippi State and Southern Miss play at 11 a.m. So I'll be there early watching that game, getting set up, getting ready for the show at 1:30. We're going to be hanging out throughout the day. Y'all make sure you turn out. Wayno, it's still not too late. You're in the future. You've got time to try time travel back here from Australia to be at the show tomorrow. So make sure y'all come out. Again, Grind City Brewing at 76 Waterworks. It starts tomorrow at 11. The show's at 1:30. Come hang out where the beers are going to be cold. The show is going to be awesome, and it's going to be a perfect football day. On the other side of the break, I got Shawn Coleman here talking Tennessee Vols, baby.
Looking for an alternative to alcohol or conventional medicine? Check out Ounce of Hope, a Memphis-based dispensary with 2 local stores in the Sanderland Center and on South Cooper Street. You can get all the products you need in a location convenient to you. Each store offers an intentional shopping experience with dedicated bud tenders to answer all of your questions, from product selection and mushroom blends to our personal favorite, the Delta 9 seltzers. You gotta try the Peach Buzz. Try Ounce of Hope at either one of their 2 Memphis stores or at www.ounceofhope.com for convenient products shipped right to your door. Use the promo code BluffCity for 15% off any order, excluding sale items. Cannot be used in conjunction with other promotions or discounts. One use per customer.
The first team I started on, we won the Miami Beach Bowl and, of course, won the Brawl as well.
Yes, you did.
We went 10-3, finished the year ranked number 25 in the country.
Yep.
And 2014, and that team and those players will be honored coming up on Saturday. For those that don't know, that team, while it's not the best team in this run, it was the start of the run. That is a special group of human beings. Truthfully, I know we don't always say it, but there's a lot of pride there, man. Like, absolutely. Even though we haven't been able to fully reap the benefits and rewards of what it's become, the indoor practice facility, the NIL money, the FedEx deal, all these different things, there is a lot of pride where we can point and be like, if we never lay that groundwork, that doesn't happen.
Tune in to On the Bluff with Christian Fowler and Gabe Kuhn every Tuesday at 12 p.m. on the Bluff City Media YouTube channel. In the heart of the Highland Strip for 27 years, Trilogy Tattoo has helped tell stories for Memphians for generations. Located at 530 South Highland, Richie and his team are waiting to help you tell yours.
From tattoos to piercings, your body art should be as unique as you are. Voted a Memphis Flyer top 3 tattoo shop in the city of Memphis since day one. Your story will be safe here at Trilogy Tattoo.
Open 7 days a week, Monday through Saturday, 11 to 11, and 3 to 11 on Sundays. They have convenient times waiting on you. Let Trilogy Tattoo help you tell your story.
Welcome back to the $2 Sports Show here on Friday at 11 a.m. I got my guy Shawn Coleman here hanging out with me. Shawn, I know I saw you shaking your head. You were shaking your head during the intro, man. Again, 1 out of 3 ain't bad for teams that you root for, man.
Yeah, I know. You know, it's a good batting average to have. Maybe not the best 3-point% shooting average, but listen, Rusty. I'm a fan of yours, and I'm a fan of the guy I'm about to mention as well. But that's an Anthony Sane introduction, okay? It's the kind backhanded compliment that happens. So that's the type of stuff I'm a shout out to Sane. Glad he's doing well, and everybody's doing well at Bluff City Media. But thanks for having me, man. Good to get to finally talk with you. Been a fan of yours for a while, and I appreciate the kind words. Well.
Yeah, likewise, man.
Yeah,
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate the stats that you drop, the sense that you bring in what can be a chaotic season as a Memphis Grizzlies fan. You know, Shawn, like it can be ups and downs. That, you know, fan is short for fanatic for a reason. And I appreciate the level-headedness that you bring to the fan base with a lot of the stats and trends that you bring up on X to kind of talk us off that ledge, man. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, it's fun to do. Like I say, you know, the other part of being a fan is that you're passionate, and you know, if you can combine, you know, numbers and basketball and all that. I know it's not for everybody, but it's for me, and I enjoy it. So you know, it's always fun. But yeah, man, a pleasure to be with you. And hey, I know that we're both Grizzlies fans, but also it's fall. It's starting to feel like fall outside. My favorite time of year. Normally, that's because the Braves are going after the playoffs, going after a World Series as well. That ain't happening this year, so even more so. Glad college football is finally here.
Yes, sir. It is the best time of the year. I know Christmas is great, and I'm not some Scrooge that'll take it away from that. But to me, truly, college football season, especially kickoff, is the most wonderful time of the year. You know, in Starkville, we still have some hope that we're not just going to go out there and just get beat to sleep every week in what is a bad, you know, a tough schedule for the last couple of years for the Bulldogs. You know, the Vols fans are still saying it feels like 98 because everybody's 0-0 right now, right? And it's heading into the season. I promise I'm almost done with the chip shots, man. But like we're heading into a season full of hope, and one where Josh Heupel has a contract extension. You've lost some of the distraction that was Nico Amalavea has gone off to UCLA. You've got a new quarterback in there in Joey Aguilar. So we'll start there. What do you think about the quarterback situation that is on Rocky Top this year?
Well, it was supposed to be a transition to a new era in multiple ways when it came to Josh Heupel. You know, the idea was that, you know, with Hendon Hooker and Joe Milton being, you know, the first main quarterbacks that he had, those older transferred from another school type quarterbacks that Heupel had success with, he now was transferring to his guy, bringing in his guy, a highly touted recruit who last year showed some promise, was really going to, as many of us hoped, take off this year. He was going to be a big reason why we had hoped that maybe this was going to be a special year, and it didn't work out. You know, for whatever reason. I know that's kind of the era of college football that we're in. I do think the Vols made the right decision. If Nico Amaliava, for whatever reason, he didn't want to be with the Vols, I think money had to do with it, you know, pretty well, you know, but you don't know really who to believe in all that. And the details, in my opinion, really aren't that big of a deal. At the end of the day, he didn't want to be there. If he had wanted to be there, he would still be here. And so I applaud Josh Heupel and being like, you know, hey, no one player is bigger than the team. So he moved on and he went and got Joey Aguilar. Now, Joey Aguilar to me is not as talented as Nico Amaliava. That's nothing against Joey Aguilar. It's just the simple truth. Mm-hmm. What gives me a little bit of faith, what gives me a little bit of hope is that if there is one coach in recent college football years that has had success with these older transfers coming in on short notice and him being able to make the most of their skill sets. It is Josh Heupel, because look at what he did with Hendon Hooker. Look at what he did with Joe Milton. I know it was to two different levels of overall team success, but he took two guys who were transferring in their last year of college eligibility and made them day 2, day 3 NFL picks because of what he could do. So I don't necessarily think that Aguilar is even to the point of being talented like a Hooker or a Milton physically, but if he can make the right decisions, and I think Heupel can help him do that, that's what's going to help us out. So do I think that Joey Aguilar is going to be one of the top 2 or 3 quarterbacks in the SEC? I don't. But do I think that Aguilar comes into a situation where he's with a coach that knows how to handle his type of skill set, his type of mentality, and can make the most of it? I think that's true, and I think that he could turn some heads with his play this year.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. Heupel is a quarterback whisperer, and his system is very simple. It's just protect the football. You've got a couple of checkdowns. It's not a ton of home runs. Yes, he had some arm talent in Hendon Hooker, and especially in Joe Milton, who could throw the deep ball and specialize in kind of taking the top off the defense. But Heupel's system is built around kind of like that, almost like Mike Leach-esque, where it's, it's out routes, it's dump offs, it's bubble screens. It's not a ton of stretching the field. And so all Aguilar really needs to be is a game manager and make sure that he protects the football, and you can win in Josh Heupel's system. You've got some talent coming back around him. Who are some of those key players who are going to help him be successful in his first year as the Vols quarterback?
Well, it's some familiar names, but the thing is that a lot of these players, like Mike Matthews at wide receiver, Deshaun Bishop at running back, Chris Brazel, at wide receiver as well. Those are names that Vols country is familiar with, but they're not necessarily names that come with a lot of production. And that's the thing that stands out about this Vols offense. Those are some names to know, but they're not because those names are names we're used to seeing produce in big moments. Those are the best of the names that are available to be playing with Aguilar this year that we're hoping stand out and really step up. That's what stands out about this Vols offense this year that both is a bit concerning, but maybe give you a bit of confidence as well. We're going to have some players step up. If we're going to beat expectations, if we're going to come anywhere close to being in, conversation for a college football playoff spot, it's because one or two of those names are going to step up. Now, if there's one name that I'm a bit confident in, that is Deshaun Bishop. We've seen what Heupel can do again, like he did with Hooker and Milton, Jalen Wright, as well as Dylan Sampson. He's made the most of running backs, and we've got some pretty good running back class. That's going to lead our offense this year. Deshaun Bishop is probably the name that I'm most interested in, really being able to see, especially his ability to get the ball in the end zone. If he can do that consistently, that can give our offense a high floor, which is definitely what we need after our first half struggles last year.
Yeah, and so you talk about last year in the college football playoffs, right? Like Tennessee finally got over the hump, right? Like they achieved, they got over the hump. They got into the mix with the college football playoff, and they faced ultimate national champion Ohio State. It didn't go how you would hope traveling to Columbus. It was cold. It was a bitter cold night, and Ohio State jumped out early, but Tennessee made a comeback, but it just felt like, Shawn, I liken it to when you drop something behind the couch and you reach for it, and instead of grabbing it, you push it a little further away, and then you push it a little further away. And that's kind of how Ohio State treated Tennessee in the college football playoff. Do you think some of that momentum is going to carry over into this year, though, right? You got to the playoffs, you know what it takes to get there. Some of those guys are a lot of those guys are back. Yes, some of your high contributors, Squirrel Wright and Brew McCoy, some of these guys are gone, but you've got guys off that team that are back. Do you think that momentum is going to carry over this year and help Tennessee early?
I think that would be the case more if Nico was still in play, because the thing is that Nico coming into this year, there was going to be more responsibility on him. The idea was for him to step up and really emerge as one of the nation's best quarterbacks. And now that's not there for, and put whatever, thoughts that you want to in that. The point that I'm getting at is that with this Vols team, yes, I think that experience was great, but overall it was an ass whooping. And that's exactly what it was. We played a much more talented team that finally that finally was able to hit on their talent, and we had no shot. The overall strength of our team last year, like many are anticipating it will be this year, was our defense, and our defense had no answer. Tim Banks is a very good defensive coordinator, but he got taken to the woodshed last year. So I don't necessarily think that there's a lot of it. It's not necessarily momentum, but it is a reference point. Josh Heupel and his team, he has been on the brink of making the playoff. Back in 2022, it didn't work out. He made it last year. It didn't work out. So what do you learn from that from Heupel overall? And yes, we do have some depth players who are going to have to step up this year. So yeah, I think it's a reference point. I think it's good experience, but this team, in terms of who we're going to need to step up, we just don't have a lot of the familiar names that over the past couple of years have really helped us out. So we're going to have several new names step up and take on big roles. And that in of itself is where the momentum is going to have to come from. And that's not necessarily the best thing to rely on going into the season.
Yeah, thankfully, we'll talk about the schedule here in a minute. Like, the early schedule is a bit forgiving. You got two juggernauts, both Bulldogs, ironically, in your first 5 games. When you travel, when Georgia comes to town and you make that long trip down to Starkville, which we'll talk about more of that here in a minute. But you talked about the defense, right? Like, you were able to rely on that defense last year. And when you're breaking in a new quarterback and you've got new players on the offense, you tend to need to lean on a defense to get there. Tennessee's strength was up front last year. Defensive line and linebackers were absolutely elite last year and won several games and kept you in the Ohio State game and other games as best they could. Is that going to be another strength for Tennessee this year? I know there was some turnover, but is that going to be another strength this year?
So the defense is supposedly supposed to be the strength this year, but it's actually going to shift back. The idea is that it's going to be our defensive secondary that's going to be there. And that I don't necessarily know. I would much rather have the clear strength of your defense be the defensive line in college football,
right.
But it is good to have, a reliable secondary. And, we've got Jamad McCoy, Boo Carter, as well as, some others, Ricky Gibson as well. I think our corners could be one of the stronger corner tandems that are out there. That's been the opinion of some others that cover college football.
I would agree with that as well. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that cover college football much more closely than I am. But while this defense can be considered a strength, it too needs players to step up. And I really, to be honest with you, the thing about this defensive line is that, there's a couple of names that you could throw out there, but there's not one real go-to guy like a James Pierce. So that's someone you're not going to replace a James Pierce. It's going to have to be by committee, but a lot of guys are going to have to step up. The guy who stands out to me, who thankfully is going to be on the team, who has worked his way back from a, somewhat tumultuous offseason, is Boo Carter. He's the type of guy who can make plays all over the field. And that's what Tennessee needs. For this Tennessee team to be able, again, to go up through this season and be a surprise contender, in my opinion, for a playoff spot, they need that jack of all trades player who can make those one or two pivotal plays in a game to shift momentum in their favor, especially against bigger teams. That type of player is Boo Carter. And so he's going to play mainly defense. He's going to be our nickel guy, big play guy. He's also going to play a little bit of offense as well, just an overall great athlete, punt returner as well. He's the guy on defense. If his play can help us win the overall turnover battle in a lot of games, that is what I think can help us get those one or two extra wins we're going to need to really knock on the door of the playoffs.
Yeah, and you mentioned that. Shout out to our partners at FanDuel. FanDuel.com is your destination this fall for all things college football betting. They've already taken some of my money in week 0 because I'm a full-on degenerate, and I love to bet on games. I love betting college football, and FanDuel is your spot this fall. FanDuel has them as a plus 370 to make the playoffs. So FanDuel is fairly high on Tennessee. They have the over-under win total at 8.5. Shawn, I feel like with this schedule that you have, I think 8.5 is very attainable. On Tuesday's episode of the 2 Buck Sports Show, Drew and I did our rundown of the conference, and we projected the win-loss for every team. I had Tennessee at 8-4. I had them just under the 8-5, with losses being against Georgia, against Alabama. I believe I had them losing to Oklahoma because Oklahoma's kind of a darling, and I had them losing to the Vanderbilt Commodores at the last game of the season, just because it's fun. The Diego Pavia story is fun. Do you feel like 8.5 is kind of like where Tennessee's going to land in that 8-9 win? Is that a pretty fair assumption, you think?
Yeah, no, the four big games are, we've got Georgia at home, we've got Oklahoma at home, and then we're on the road against Alabama as well as Florida. I think we win at least one of those games and maybe two. If we win two of those games, that'd be great. But then, of course, there's always the risk. Heupel always seems to struggle on a road game away, and that could be Florida at the end of the season. No offense to you, Rusty. I'm not really worried about Mississippi State that much, especially, with the fact that we'll have, Arkansas and Alabama coming up after that. Georgia, especially being at home. Another big thing about the schedule this year is that Georgia and Florida are basically flip-flopping to where, we got Florida at Florida in November versus early September when we've got Georgia. That Georgia game is going to make or break our season. I don't have a lot of confidence. I think that Georgia is the better team naturally, and Kirby Smart has had Josh Heupel's number, but perhaps, Heupel is very, very good at home. So perhaps he can get the job done. So yes, I think 8 wins is probably where it is. Again, I think we probably go 1-3 in that Florida, Oklahoma, Alabama, Georgia quartet of games. We probably lose another one. But if this team can win, if they could beat Georgia and we can go, for instance, into that Mississippi State game undefeated, then we're starting to knock on the door of really being a surprise playoff contender. But yeah, I think 8 wins would be a satisfactory season. If we can get 9 wins with a chance at 10 in the bowl game, I think that will be a very successful season.
Yeah, and I think if you get to 9 wins, I think there could be a 9-win SEC team in the college football playoff. Again, Tennessee's plus 370. I'm a bit higher on South Carolina, and I know that's sacrilege to a lot of fans in what's formerly the SEC East. You being one of those, I'm a bit higher on South Carolina to get there. I think they're deeper. I think they returned a lot more talent. And anytime in the SEC you're bringing back an experienced quarterback, which is what Lenore Sellers is, I'm a bit higher on South Carolina. But again, with the schedule that you have, if Tennessee gets to 9, knocking on the door of 10 wins in the regular season, I think you're a shoo-in for an at-large bid. And you catch Georgia early, which is going to be key because Georgia's had a tumultuous offseason. As one of your bigger rivals, you've watched it, right? Apparently, Uber and Lyft are not a thing in Athens, and it feels like every week we're finding out a new Georgia player's got a DUI or a speeding ticket or whatever, and Kirby Smart feels like he's losing institutional control. You catch Georgia early. It's a 3:30 game. It's going to be at Neyland. You know it's going to be rowdy. I've went and watched Mississippi State play at Neyland. I know how loud it gets in there. And again, I'm a graduate of the greatest university in the land, Mississippi State, where we use cowbells to get really loud at home, and Neyland Stadium can get rocking. If you can find a way to upset Georgia at home in the third game of the season, I think feels like 98 becomes a real thing for Tennessee because the rest of your schedule is fairly forgiving. Yes, you travel to Alabama. Yes, you travel to Florida, but you get Arkansas at home. You have to go to Kentucky as your other road game. You get Vanderbilt at home. You get Oklahoma at home. I think you beat Georgia, Shawn, and we're having a real conversation about an at-large bid for the Vols to the playoffs.
Yeah, no, and at the very least, if we beat Georgia, it's going to be disappointing if we don't get double-digit wins. Again, I'll be surprised. I am not putting the success of this team on whether they make the playoffs this year or not. Last year, that was the case. This year, it's not so much the case, because again, we've just got a lot of new. One thing that I don't think is talking about enough is not only do we need unproven skill players to step up, but we lost a lot of experience on that starting line as well. Our left tackle, Hurd, has to be much better as well. So we have to have a lot of players step up. So you're right. That Georgia game is going to make or break the season, in my opinion. If we win it, we go undefeated, and we go into that Mississippi State game undefeated, things could get special really quickly. But it also could kind of, even if we lose to Georgia, that doesn't necessarily derail the season, but it all hinges on that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you start off, you're a 13.5-point favorite against the Syracuse Orangemen. You've got the kickoff game, the Chick-fil-A Classic there in Atlanta. I feel like that's a very winnable game for the Volunteers and one that you should win. Both teams are breaking in a new quarterback. They've got a lot of roster overhaul. But Tennessee is an SEC team. You should be able to handle an ACC opponent in Syracuse pretty easily. I don't know that's going to be a test. You'll be tested against Georgia. Shawn, I've seen a lot, as a Mississippi State fan, this bothers me. I have seen a lot of people. It's very trendy right now to pick Mississippi State to upset the Vols in Starkville on Saturday, September 27th. I don't know, man. That bothers me because I don't know that, I don't like that because that's adding expectations to us. Like we were a 3-win team last year. I think there's a path to 6 wins for State this year, but I just don't know why that's a game that's being trendy to pick. You think it's because it's a road game, because it's early? What are your thoughts on why that's kind of that trendy upset pick?
The coach there now is Levy, right? Jeff Levy?
Jeff Levy, yep.
Yeah, Jeff Levy. I think what it is it's just the opportunity it's your opportunity to get that first signature win. I think that's what probably it is. I'm not sure who y'all start out with schedule-wise before that, but many people without us having Nico could think that we're probably not as good as we had hoped this year. And the fact that it's, again, that first real big test for Mississippi State in Levy's second year, I think that has a lot to do with it. The reason why I'm not necessarily concerned about that Mississippi State game is because Tennessee's going to have their identity understood by then. And what I mean by that is that I think you mentioned the Syracuse game. In the Syracuse game, we simply need to do this. We don't need to beat ourselves. We need to establish that we are the better defense and we are the better running game. And we need to make sure that Aguilar does not make mistakes in terms of committing turnovers. The big stat to follow all year long for Tennessee is going to be the turnover stat. If we, and I know that that's, everybody says that, but it especially is the case when it comes to Tennessee, because if we can get turnovers, that means that we're going to be able to control the clock with our running game, and that's going to put Joey Aguilar in rhythm to be able to make plays. He's kind of been prop quarterback at times. He can make some plays outside of routine, so that can really help him out. But if he is making turnovers, if he's committing the turnovers, this is not a team, unlike previous years. I don't think this team is going to be as good at coming back. Don't forget last year, we had so much trouble scoring in the first half of games. Playing from behind, I think, is going to be another issue for the team this year. So the big thing for us is winning that turnover battle. If Aguilar can just make sure that he does not turn the ball over, our running game making sure that they don't fumble the ball. Dylan Sampson had a horrible time last year making 15 fumbles. We've got to take care of the football. If we can do that, that's going to give our guys more confidence to step up like we need them to. So that's going to be big for us. But establishing the running game, establishing being the better defense, that's going to be our key to success probably leading up to that Mississippi State game. Then maybe by that time we'll have some skilled players making some plays for us.
Yeah, for Mississippi State, we get tested early. We've got Southern Miss at Southern Miss, which is a sneaky game because they're a lot better. They hired the coach off of Marshall. They brought in a lot of that talent from that Marshall team. Southern Miss can be better, but I think we win that game. Then Arizona State comes to Starkville. It's a long way from Tempe, so that's an upset I think is going to happen. And I think that's the first SEC game that we have is Tennessee on the 27th, and so a lot of people are picking Jeff Levy to win his first SEC game then. I don't think that happens then. I think Tennessee is the better team. I think where we win our first SEC game is the next week. We travel to College Station, and recently, at least since A&M has picked up in the SEC, and this is what is a budding rivalry, the road team has the advantage. We are both the mechanical schools, both the military schools. The road team has tend to win in that. And so I don't know that we're going to have the dogs to upset Tennessee just because of what you said. Defense and Josh Heupel teams control the football. They hang on to the football. They're on offense for a long time. They lean on your defense. Yes, they can score quickly, but like in years past, getting Sampson run in and getting these guys going, Heupel controls the football. So I don't know that we can do that. But the road team has the stark advantage in the Mississippi State A&M rivalry, and I think that's where we get our first upset. I'm like you. I hate to admit it as a Mississippi State fan, but I do agree that I'm not super worried about us upsetting Tennessee. I look for that first upset to come against A&M. So you're looking at the schedule for Tennessee, right? We both said 8 wins is kind of where we're going to land. What are looking at the schedule again? You got Georgia at home, at State, off, Arkansas, at Alabama, at Kentucky. What's that trap game? Because there's always that one game where it's like, this is one we need to be careful of that we can get stung in. Looking at the schedule for Tennessee, what is that trap game for y'all this year?
It's that Tennessee. It's the Kentucky game. Excuse me. It's that Kentucky game. Basically, we'll be coming off the Alabama game, and say we come off that Alabama game, and hey, maybe we win, maybe we don't. But it's a lot of people I think would be looking again at that Mississippi State game, but I don't think so because we've got the UAB game between that. It's that Kentucky game. Heupel always seems to struggle in a middle to late season road game. Last year it was Arkansas, where we struggled. The year that we were on our way to the playoff, it was the South Carolina game. So I think it's that Kentucky game where Tennessee could really struggle, that game that we should win, that many expect for us to win, that we wind up losing, especially if we go into the game, that game with 2 or less losses. So that Kentucky game is a bit of a concern to me. I think that it's not as much of a concern because I think Heupel's handled Kentucky okay.
Kentucky's bad.
Yeah,
but bad.
Yeah, but that Kentucky game, I think, though, is still a bit of a trap game just because it's on the road and coming after a big game where if we win, we're certainly going to be on cloud 9.
Yeah, you're sandwiched between 2 big games there, right? You're at Alabama. You go to Kroger Field, which is a weird place to play.
Yeah.
Like, as a Mississippi State fan, we play there a lot. That's a weird place. I've watched Ray Davis run for like 1 billion yards on us in that stadium, and it's a gross place to go play. It's a weird stadium. I hate Kroger Field. And it's sandwiched between, again, at Alabama, and then you got Oklahoma coming, who is kind of a darling in the SEC this year, right? They're a trendy team to pick to win 8-9 ball games and kind of be like that upset team. I think Oklahoma's defense is going to be good. Mateer is supposed to be the real deal, but until a Brett Venables offense can actually have a pulse, I don't know that I'm going to buy into them. Their defense will be really good, but I can see that being a trap. You talk about road games. I think that Florida game is going to be a struggle as well. Florida is a team that everybody's high on. I think DJ Lagway has got a year under his belt. I do think he's going to be better. If you're comparing young quarterbacks, again, I like Lenore Sellers a bit better, but that's a big rivalry game with Florida. Billy Napier, we all saw last year, was basically coaching for his life and now somehow has a secure job. I'm really not sure how that worked out, but I look for that one to be a trap game as well. Yes, you got New Mexico State before, but you got Vanderbilt after, which, say what you want, it is a rivalry game, but traveling to Florida is going to be a tough test on November 22nd as well.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily know if I see what you're meaning by it being a trap game. The reason why I don't necessarily think that it's a trap game at that point is because Florida could easily be favored, especially if Lagway is healthy and playing well. Because I think that's the big thing for Lagway is that, Billy Napier has done very well against Josh Heupel. Going back the past 2 years, they easily could have won last year. And of course they throttled us, when Joe Milton was quarterback. So the point is that, yes, Tennessee's got to figure out how to be able to find success in the swamp. They've got to, especially if Florida winds up being one of our 3 permanent opponents, with this SEC schedule. So yeah, that Florida game could easily be a trap game. But again, if Tennessee can figure out how to probably go 2-2 in that Georgia, Oklahoma, Alabama, Florida stretch, that could really be helpful. But again, like I say, I think it's going to be easier said than done. I just don't know where Tennessee is going to get the consistent go-to option other than Deshaun Bishop surprising many and becoming one of the best running backs in, the league. Last year, Dylan Sampson was Offensive Player of the Year for Tennessee. That's why we were so good despite Nico's struggles. Unless one of our receivers just absolutely takes off, it's going to be hard for us to get that done. So, yeah, I think that Kentucky game can be a trap game, and that's, of course, why we're talking about the 8 wins, because we got so many people we need to step up.
Yeah, for sure. I'm curious about your take on this. This came out in September of last year. You talked about the NIL earlier with the money for Nico and how that kind of went down. Tennessee was one of the first ones to kind of start having the fans foot the bill for NIL. There was an article that came out late in September from the Business Insider that starting this season, the University of Tennessee added a 10% talent fee to football tickets, plus a 4.5% price increase to support student-athlete pay, highlighting the evolving NIL and revenue-sharing environment. Personally, I am happy to see college players getting paid. I think that's the direction it needs to go, as much money as universities make off of it. As a fan of Tennessee, what is your thoughts about this 10% increase for the players to get paid off the tickets?
I mean, at the end of the day, listen, I want fans to be able to enjoy the experience. I know leading up to this year, there's been talk about, fans and families who have been supporters of Tennessee for decades. They're now priced out of, being able to go to games. But on, the side of things now, someone that, on my end who has covered, multiple sports, listen, at the end of the day, if you're consistently being successful, or even more importantly, your level of success continues to go up and you're not seeing any downtrends when it comes to
Mhm.
people attending games, make as much money as possible. I'm not necessarily, I'm not the biggest fan of it, but I get it. I understand it. If Tennessee wants to be where their fan base wants them to be,
Mm.
it comes from being resourceful, being one of the most resourceful sources of collegiate sports out there, and getting as many good players as possible. And that's what you want. Us charging that 10% fee, if that goes back to the athletes, that just helps out. And us getting that elusive, next national championship in football, or that elusive national championship in basketball. So I'm for it. And I won't say that I'm for it. I get it. I understand that if Tennessee's not seeing a downtrend in terms of fans attending the games and the support and that representation being there, I'm not saying sit there and just absolutely go crazy charging folks. But if it's a recipe that's led to success and you're seeing the product that you're investing in continue to be successful, why change what's working?
I mean, that's it, man. And at the end of the day, on this show, we have been known to be fans of people getting a bag. And so I want the players to get paid.
Sure.
I also understand the fans footing some of that bill because that's the nature of college football now. Now, like, gone are the days of playing for that T on the side of the helmet or that state across the front of their jersey. You've got kids that are seeking a payday, and I get it. They bring in millions and millions of dollars for these universities that helps fund the education programs and fund the college basketball and baseball and gymnastics programs. Football is the breadwinner. That's where you make your money. And so in order to be competitive, you have to have deep coffers for NIL deals and to get players in. If you're going to continue to get top talent, and Josh Heupel has proven that he can do that, you're going to have to pay up. And so at the end of the day, agreed, you don't want to price out the families that live in Farragut and in Lookout Mountain area or in Memphis or, these small communities within Tennessee, because we are a state that struggles with poverty. You don't want to price those families out of being able to go to games, but you got to pay these players somehow. And yes, the players are going to get endorsements. They're going to get NIL deals from chicken restaurants and from tire shops and from brand deals and those type things that we're seeing across the country. But I understand why, if the fans want to see a good product that's competitive in the SEC, I think Tennessee is kind of spearheading this. And I think it's going to be a roaring success. You talk about a rabid fan base. Vol Nation is a rabid fan base that supports their volunteers in good years and bad years. Like, you tune in and week out during the Phil Fulmer days, during the afterwards as you were struggling, the Butch Jones days and those things. Those stadiums were full of people, Shawn, and I think that trend's going to continue even with a 10% fee, especially because they know that money's going to the athletes to make this program better.
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, Tennessee is going to be there. It may not necessarily be the, great stories or the hardworking people consistently, those stories that you love to see. But again, at the end of the day, Tennessee, the people who are behind the scenes, who are making the decisions on those prices and things like that, all they care about is those tickets being sold. And if those tickets are sold and those seats are filled, that's what matters to them. Again, I want to be able to attend games comfortably as well as many others do. But more than anything, I want the program to be successful. And if this is the way to go about doing it in today's age, let's do it. Now, with that being said, one other thing that I'll throw in there, I wish there was a bit more of a commitment, standard when it came to the athletes. If you come to a school, you've seen several of these athletes be able to move, across different schools and all that different stuff so quickly, a year after year. You could see an athlete play at 3 or 4 colleges, which if, hey, they're available to, that's fine. But me personally, I'm not the biggest fan of that aspect. I'm all for the athletes getting paid. Just don't know if I'm the biggest fan of them being able to just go to any school that they want to at any time, year after year.
Yeah, I think the day of the contract is coming. Right now it's the Wild West. The toothpaste is out of the tube. You can't put it back in and put salary caps and that kind of stuff. That's going to be hard. But I do think that contracts are coming where there's going to be a commitment. If you make X amount of dollars, you have to play in X amount of games or be around for X amount of games in X amount of years. And I think that's the way to go, because you're asking boosters to cough up hundreds of thousands of dollars. And some of these kids are getting paid multi-million-dollar contracts, quote unquote, to play college football. Some of them are taking a pay cut to go to the NFL, especially if they're going later rounds. And so I think that the day of a contract is coming, and I think that's needed, right? These guys that you see Florida and some of these schools that have been bit by players that have come in, taken money, and then immediately ran. You need to have some kind of regulations. If you're expecting boosters to put up that kind of money, then there needs to be some kind of commitment for the players. I think that those two things need to go hand in hand.
Yeah, no, I think that's perfectly fair. A great assessment as well. Yes, I think so. And I don't think that's too big of an ask. Like, the thing was out there about Nico having a contract in place, where for 8 to 8.5 million or whatever. And part of that was doing these appearances and things like that. Again, I don't want to say that, I have that confirmed. That's just what my understanding has been, reading different takes and all that different stuff. But I don't necessarily know if it needs to be that standard, that much of a standard. The point that I'm getting at is that I don't think that it is unfair to athletes that if you're going to commit to a school, it's for multiple years, because that just allows for, I'm all, again, for players getting paid. I'm all, for some type of quote unquote free agency in college sports, if it makes sense, especially, because situations can change all the time, but also think that there needs to be some type of, regulations to where if you choose a school, that school is going to know that they're going to be able to rely on your presence there for multiple years.
Absolutely. Shawn, I appreciate you being here with me today, man. We're coming over the 41-minute mark. I appreciate you giving me this much of your time, man. Thank you so much and hanging out with me today. As we wrap up the episode, you talked about 8 wins would be a very acceptable season, but what does success look like this year for the Tennessee Volunteers? We talked about it may not necessarily be playoff or bust, but what does a successful season for Tennessee look like?
Double-digit wins. I think double-digit wins is what stands out. That's kind of been the mark of Heupel since he's been here. I think that's what we prayed, for so many years, for 15 years or so since Fulmer has gone. Just give us a coach who year in and year out can consistently get us to double-digit wins. It doesn't necessarily have to be that we're knocking on the door of a national championship like a Bama or a Georgia, but every few years, we may have an outside shot. Heupel has shown he can get us to that point. The next level up is really being able to win those big games at night, especially on the road, to really get us, in a shot for a potential national title. I still think that's years away, but getting there is, a step towards getting there is in a season where you have to the lead up to it. You have had a lot of things not necessarily go your way or not go as planned. Being able to still figure out how to find success and get to that double-digit win mark, I think that shows that Heupel really is one of the more resourceful coaches in college football, and also it shows that he's one of the better developmental coaches. And when he says he continues to get more and more natural talent from recruiting and transfers into Tennessee, one of these years it's going to click and we're going to have a real shot at a national title. So I think getting double-digit wins, especially with having a big need in so many areas for people to step up, if they do that, that'll really be a feather in the cap of Heupel for the future.
And I do agree. As much as I give Tennessee grief and hate, just because, sidebar about my family, I grew up an Alabama fan. All my family's from kind of Northwest Alabama, so I grew up an Alabama fan. So I grew up with a hatred for Tennessee, and then I went to school at Mississippi State, and so that really didn't go away. I will give credit where credit's due that Josh Heupel is one of the best developmental coaches. You saw what he did with, Hendon Hooker, Joe Milton, and Nico, what he was doing with those quarterbacks. And he is a quarterback whisperer. I like what he's building there on Rocky Top. It's a dangerous thing for a guy who is rooting for the downfall of the Tennessee Vols. I do think you've got a guy in Josh Heupel that you've now extended through 2030, I believe, with this most recent extension, who's going to be there and building a juggernaut for Vols Nation to be a fan of for sure.
Yeah, and Rusty, we really need to work on how you start and end shows, because this whole I'm kind and I'm going to, get you going and, butter you up and all this different stuff for 30 minutes just to start out with insults for the first two and end with the first two. That's how this is supposed to work, but I get it. It's college football rivalry. But yes, I'm happy with Heupel. When he was first hired, I questioned it. I didn't think that it was that great of a hire, but he has exceeded expectations. He's done everything and probably then some that we could ask in his first, 4 years here now. And the hope is that that'll be even more so. It's very hard to stay consistent in this era of college football. He's done that for the Vols again, year in and year out. It's not a far-fetched idea for him to get double-digit wins, and that's a lot better than where we were, for the past, 15 years before.
Watching Butch Jones hold up garbage cans on the sidelines, talking about brick by brick, was a tough watch. But you weathered that storm. You got Josh Heupel, and I'm going to end on a positive note. I do wish you luck, man. Shawn, I do appreciate you being here with me today, man. This was huge. This is great content, great insight on the Tennessee Volunteers and their upcoming season. Tomorrow you got a kickoff against Syracuse. 13.5-point spread. They're a 13.5-point favorite on FanDuel.com. Do you, as we wrap up and end here, man, do you think Tennessee covers the 13.5-point spread on FanDuel?
I'm going to say that I don't know if they cover. I think that they win by a touchdown plus, but I think that it's probably going to be that 10 to 13 point win, not that most convincing. Probably going to be a bit lower scoring. I'm not sure what the over under is, but if it's above 45 to 50, I may be comfortable going the under on that. Hope I'm wrong. But yeah, I think, it could be more of a push than anything, but I think Tennessee wins by 10 to 13 tomorrow.
Well, there you have it, guys. Tennessee going to get a big win over Syracuse in the morning. May not be what FanDuel thinks, but Tennessee is going to get a win and start the season off 1-0. Again, Shawn, thank you so much for being here, man. I really appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, man. Rusty, to you, Kenny, everybody else, Sane as well. I've known a lot of y'all for several years. Some of y'all, just getting to know, but a big fan of the work that y'all do. Best of luck, with the college football season coming up, and obviously after that, the Grizzlies. But I'll always be tuning in, and we'll be glad to be back anytime. Thanks for having me, man. Go
yeah,
Bulls.
Of course, man. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Y'all come out tomorrow. 1:30 is the live show, but we're going to be there starting at 11 a.m. at Grind City Brewing. Your home for college football season this fall on Saturdays. But in the meantime, go be a friend to somebody who needs a friend. We'll see you tomorrow at the live show and back here on Monday.
Thank you for listening to the $2 Sports Show. If you enjoyed this episode, leave a rating and a review wherever you download your podcasts. Also, like and subscribe to Bluff City Media's YouTube page. We'll see you back here next.